Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, good morning, everyone. Today is Monday, September 8th, and this is the meeting of the Policy and Innovation Committee for SACOG. Thank you all for being here. We do not have any members participating remotely today. So next thing on the agenda is actually our Pledge of Allegiance. So if you please stand and join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is roll call. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Thank you. Good morning. Director Andreatta,
Present.
Chapdelaine,
Here.
Gallardo,
Here.
Kennedy, McCauley,
Here.
Rodriguez, absent Schaefer, absent Soon, absent Veerkamp,
Here.
Vice Chair Vega, absent, and Chair Dowden Calvillo.
Present, and let the
Thank
record
you.
show that we do have a quorum for the purposes of our meeting today. Next item on the agenda is public comment, and this is an opportunity for anyone to address the committee on issues that are not on the agenda. No action can be taken. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment today?
There is no public comment.
All right, we're going to move right on to disclosures. Are there any disclosures from directors at this point? Seeing none, we'll move on to consent. Just for the purposes of the record, I'd like to remove item number 1. We do have a quick revision to that. So is there any public comment on the consent calendar?
There's no public comment.
Okay, is there a motion to approve 2, 3, and 4 on consent?
I move approval.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Let the record show the motion has been adopted unanimously. Item number 1, just pulled it off the agenda. We just had a quick little change to make, and that was to reflect that our vice chair was absent at the last meeting versus both here and absent. So with that said, can I ask for a motion to approve the amended minutes? Is there a second?
Second.
Any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Hearing none, those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Let the record show the motion has been adopted. Moving on, next item is action item, approve the request for proposals for federal advocacy services. I'll hand this over to staff.
Good morning, everyone. I am Gabby. I'm with the Government and Public Affairs team here at SACOG. Over the last 5 years, SACOG has contracted with federal lobbyists, Capital Transportation Consulting, and Pavlicek and Associates to help us develop and lead our federal advocacy efforts in Washington, D.C. We have seen significant wins and increased engagement with congressional leaders and administrative officials with their help. However, we are now nearing the end of our contract and are legally required to release a request for proposals. As we look ahead, it is clear that continued federal advocacy is vital. Congress and the administration are focused on a surface transportation authorization bill expiring at the end of 2026 and having consistent representation in DC over the next year or so, as these negotiations continue, will help build on the recent advocacy our current lobbyists have done, such as submitting recommendations to USDOT and Congress on our behalf. Our lobbyists have also been instrumental in continued advocacy for securing funding for Green Means Go, as well as helping our member jurisdictions in their own efforts in seeking federal funding, such as pre-application strategy and alignment with grants, and post-award assistance and coordination with some of our congressional delegates. We are asking that the board authorize SACOG and the executive director to issue a request for proposals for federal advocacy services.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Members, are there any questions or comments for staff at this time? All right, well, yes.
I just had one question. So the item says not to exceed 190,000. Looking at the estimated cost, it says 160. So is the 190 just a buffer, just so you have a little bit of room to move?
I think that was after adjustment. I apologize for the error. The 90 is what we settled on.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And then I note that a selection panel will be made up of myself and staff to go over those RFPs once they're issued. So looking forward to that. All right. Any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
All right, I'm going to move it back, bring it back to the board or the committee. What is your pleasure? Is there a motion? Okay, there's
Second.
a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, do we need a voice vote on this, Madam Clerk, or?
No, you can take an all-in-one.
Oh, no,
motion.
all right, okay. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Let the
Nay.
record show the motion has been adopted unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, so we just have informational items next, the required communication with auditor statement and auditing standards number 114.
Good morning, Loretta Sue, Finance Director. Staff are wrapping up the year-end close for fiscal year 2024-25 and preparing for the upcoming financial audit and also the transit audit for the Fort County, which is started last week. In accordance to the accounting standards, auditors are required to communicate to the agency governing bodies in SACOG case, which is the Policy Innovation Committees related to audits and financials related matters. So this year we'll have Bailey will be auditing SACOG financial statement, and Richardson and Company will be auditing the Fort County Transit the transit funds. So this morning we have David Showalter. He is joining us online to present to just provide an overview of the audit process and schedule and any accounting standard that are required to disclose in the SACOG annual financial statement for the fiscal year 2024-25.
Good morning, committee members. My name is David Showalter with Eide Bailly, and thank you for having me this morning. As Loretta mentioned, what's on the agenda is our required communications letter for this year's annual audit of SACOG's financial statements. So you should have in your package the letter that has the Eide Bailly logo at the top. And so this letter is basically required by our auditing standards to be presented to you at the beginning of the audit. As Loretta mentioned, we have started the audit phases, and we will be starting the final phase of the annual audit here soon. But generally, the required communications include our responsibility with respect to the audit. On an annual basis, your team signs an annual engagement letter, which outlines various responsibilities that you have and we have with respect to the audit of the financial statements. So for this year, our audit will be conducted in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. And in addition, we'll also conduct a single audit, which is an audit of your federal awards that you receive on an annual basis. And just to reiterate, management is ultimately responsible for the financial statements. This year, as we've done in the past, we have assisted SACOG with the preparation of the financial statements from the perspective that SACOG is providing us with the closed trial balance and all the numbers have been adjusted. And then we simply take that information and put it into a financial statement format. But ultimately, Loretta and her team take responsibility for the financial statements. They review the financial statements, they provide feedback, and then we also assist with providing the final version of those financial statements. So our audit, we started our audit phase back in July, and this month we'll start the final phase of the audit with the expectation of hopefully issuing the reports before the end of the year. There's also other components with respect to the audit. There's another firm involved with auditing the other funds, the TDA funds, the LTF, and various other funds that we incorporate into our audit, and then we make reference to those other auditors in our report. And we've been doing that since we've been engaged to do the audit for SACOG. So there are multiple auditors involved, and our responsibility as the group auditor, because we have ultimate responsibility over the SACOG's financial statements, is to communicate with those other auditors, and we communicate back and forth on timing and related parties and other aspects of the audit. But ultimately, I think those audits will be coming in sometime around the end of October, and then the expectation is hopefully getting everything finalized before the end of the year. With respect to our responsibility is to render an opinion on the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, generally accepted auditing standards, as well as generally accepted government auditing standards. And our audit is designed to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence that the financial statements are free of material misstatement in all material respects. And our opinion will be rendered in accordance with that standard. With respect to this year's audit, we also are responsible for communicating to you any significant risks that we've identified in the audit. And so we go through that process every year where we sit down with management, we go through an understanding of anything that's changed during the year, as well as in our professional standards, and as well as any other external risks that might impact SACOG and their financial statements. And so for this year's audit, consistent with the prior year's audit, in accordance with our professional standards, we are required to assess the possibility of revenue recognition as a significant risk. And so revenue recognition is an item that we've identified as a significant risk. And the reason for that is that in the governmental accounting world, the governmental agencies obtain revenues from various sources and various types of revenues. And those revenue types have different revenue recognition criteria associated with them. So we believe that, we spend a lot of time auditing revenue and testing transactions to make sure that the revenue is recognized in the financial statements and in the proper year in accordance with GAAP. Management override of internal controls is another significant risk, and this is something where our audit standards primarily dictates that this type of a risk be identified as a significant risk. There's always a risk that management could override internal controls throughout the year with respect to recording transactions in the accounting system and other types of various transactions. So the way we respond to those risks are through various inquiry fraud risks in the organization. And we also test journal entries throughout the year to make sure that they're appropriately documented. They have a business rationale behind those journal entries and that they tie back to the supporting documentation. Significant estimates is another significant risk with respect to your financial statements. And what that means is that in your financial statements, their management is making estimates with respect to various account balances based on various factors. And with respect to SACOG's financial statements, we have various liabilities associated with pension and OPEB and that are very significant to the financial statements. And those liabilities are primarily derived from actuarial valuations. So the way that management addresses those estimates is interacting with valuation experts like actuaries to assist them with determining what those liabilities should be. So we spend a lot of time going through those valuations and auditing them and testing them and making sure that they're reasonable in all material respects. And then lastly, we do have a new accounting pronouncement this year, which is Governmental Accounting Standards Statement number 101, which is dealing with compensated absences. So this is a liability that's accrued on the balance sheet for leave that is earned but not taken for various types, including vacations, sick, and other types of leave. And so for this year, SACOG has always recorded a liability on their books with respect to compensated absences. What's changing this year is the way that the liability is measured. So now we're measuring the liability as more likely than not that liability will be liquidated through cash or compensated through time being taken. And so SACOG would need to go back and reevaluate its policies and also reevaluate certain time that's taken throughout the year. More specifically, things like sick leave, where we only had to recognize sick leave when it was vested and it was when it would be paid out to that employee if they were to leave the organization. And now we would pick up that sick leave liability while that employee is still employed with the organization and determining whether it's more likely than not that they'll be taking that liability at some point during their tenure with the organization. So a few changes with the accounting pronouncement, and we'll be working with Loretta and her team on the implementation this year. And then lastly, again, we expect to begin our audit, like as I mentioned, in July, which we've already started the audit, and we'll be wrapping up the audit sometime around that November timeframe. And then the single audit, which is in addition to the financial statement audit, we audit the SACOG's federal awards, which requires a separate audit of federal awards, and then there's reporting that goes along with that as well. Now, with respect to the single audit, our hands are a little bit tied right now with single audit because the Office of Management and Budget at the federal level has yet to release a final compliance supplement, which is the audit guides that we use to do the audit. So So we're a little bit, at this point, waiting until we can get the compliance supplement finalized by the OMB so that we can start those single audits so that we can get those issued. So we're hopeful that the OMB will be gracious this year and give us some extensions with the timeline on the single audit, because it's pretty unusual that they're waiting this long to have a final compliance supplement to come out. That compliance supplement is important because when we opine on the federal compliance, we make reference to the OMB compliance supplement in our audit opinions. And without a final compliance supplement, we're unable to start and even finish those audits at this point. So that's just a little bit of an update for you. So, and then, yeah, so that's basically the what makes up our required communications, and just open up if you have any questions for me.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your going over those issues, and I'm going to open this up and see if there are any questions. Let's see. Yes.
Just a question, when you mentioned about significant risks when we were talking about income and some of the others, is that always the terminology we've used for in past years, or is this something, a new way to identify?
Yes, this is the result of a new standard that came out a few years ago, where we were required to communicate in our communications letter what are the significant risks of the audit. It has always been a significant risk in our audit, but we were never required to communicate that to those charged with governance. So within the last few years, we've started incorporating that language in this required communications letter, which is probably why you're hearing about it more often. So
So it's not that the risks change, it's just the way you identify.
it's the
them.
communication standard that's changed. Yes.
Thank you.
Always changing.
Yep.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment on this item?
There's no public comment.
All right, well, it is an informational item, so I guess I didn't need to ask for public comment, but that's okay. You can never have too much public comment. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
for
you.
going over the letters, and appreciate it. And we'll move on to the next item, which is also informational advocacy update.
Good morning, Chair Dowden Calvillo and board members. I'm Bless Shepherd, State Government Affairs Lead for SACOG, and we wanted to take this morning to update you on all things federal and state issues. It's been a few months since your last meeting. That was in June. I know it doesn't seem like it, but time flies in 2025. Our federal and state lobbyists are here to give you that update. And joining us first is Devin Barnhart, our federal lobbyist with Capital Transportation Consulting. Take it away, Devin.
Hi, all. Thanks for having me today. I wanted to give a quick couple of updates, one about what's happening at the federal level on just broadly, and then speak to surface transportation more specifically. So big picture issues, there's a lot happening, all of which you can read in the news around immigration and other issues that are sucking up the oxygen in the room on how well we partner as Democrats and Republicans in Congress. And so there's a lot of uncertainty in this moment about what can we get agreement on moving forward. And the only bill that really impacts coming up is the appropriations bill that's on the docket in September. Every year, it's our annual appropriations, funds the bulk majority of our federal programs, does not have as large of an impact on transportation, though it is important. So I'm going to go through why appropriations is going to be problematic, and you'll see it in the news, and then sort of talk more specifically about what that means in the transportation space. For appropriations, that annual bill is what happens whenever anyone's talking about a government shutdown. And so we're likely to start hearing the conversation around government shutdown is impending. The two sides can't come to agreement. This is an every year activity at this point. And so none of it is, it's always alarming, and it always is sort of something we pay attention to, but it is not something that is inherently imminent. What usually happens is we can't come to agreement by the end of September. We kick the can down the road to December. We do it right before some of the holidays, and that sort of prods people into action. So that's what we're guessing is likely to happen. It may or may not this year, just given that tensions are a little bit more strained than they are in other years. So what that means in the transportation space is pretty limited. The bulk of our transportation funding for MPOs and for most of transportation is protected and isn't subject to the shutdown funding level. So that part is good. The only thing it does shut down is where we may be talking to the federal government about a grant or moving forward an environmental document. Those pieces can be slowed. And so if there's a project in your region, like it's good to know that like that could be slowed down during the shutdown, but it's largely not going to stop that project from moving forward long term. So that's big picture is that everyone will spend a lot of time talking about a shutdown. It will eat up a lot of the big picture conversations as well as other issues in foreign aid and immigration that are outside our scope. But really what's happening in the background and the bulk of where Jason Pavlicek and I are spending our time is the surface transportation bill, because that work continues no matter what happens at the big picture. And so the committees and USDOT are very actively engaged in getting a bill ready to move forward. We're about a year and I don't know what's the date, maybe like a year and 20 some days from the IIJA, the very large transportation bill, expiring. And so folks are really at the go line of like, we need to start putting out that legislative text. Committees are still drafting. Republicans have the pen because they're in power in both the House and the Senate. And so they have not shared that text thus far with Democrats very broadly. And so the true negotiations haven't begun, but we're sort of like right in that starting point. So we're spending a lot of time focused on how do we advance our priorities. There's a couple of big picture conversations that are happening that are worth flagging. States, MPOs like SACOG and transit agencies are the main recipients of federal dollars in the surface transportation bill. And there's always sort of a push-pull on all sides about how much of the pot goes to each of those entities, how much goes to formulas, and how much goes to grants. Those conversations are very much underway. And what Jason and I look at is what drives funding to the region? How can we bolster that funding so that the programs that most support the work that all of you are doing increases in a way that's helpful to support the programs that you all pursue. And so just to flag a couple, we've really been talking a lot about how do we increase the planning funds that are the bread and butter funds that help regions to support the work that needs to be done across the region. And that conversation's been very well received. That funding has not been increased at the same level over time. And so folks have been talking about, great, like what are MPOs doing? What kinds of funds might they need because of new technology that's coming to our region, new data sources that are available to use, and how we incorporate them in our decision making. And so having really good conversations about should we increase, if funds are available, that planning dollar. Same thing's happening on the capital side. So we have a capital program called STBG. This is a big flexible, it's a block grant surface transportation program that funds a lot of activities, everything from safety to roads and bridges. It just has our big pot of flexible dollars, and it flows down to the MPOs. And so just really pushing on, as we think about how are we going to structure this next bill, really pushing for those dollars that are very flexible, that can cover a variety of activities, to also be increased. That's a longer conversation that we don't have a lot of clarity on, but we get a lot of support from Congress in general on this topic. It's just the money situation hasn't yet been worked out. And then also, as we're talking, when I talked about like the push-pull between states, MPOs, transit agencies, there's been a big push this year. Many MPOs, including SACOG, have been more vocal about the issues that help MPOs to support the region. This is really helpful because this year in particular, states are also pushing for a bigger portion of the funds to go to states, and having a nice balance between what states are doing, what regions are doing, and how we support our localities is really important. And so it's been very helpful to flag all of the really good programs that have been happening at the regional level. One of those that we spend a lot of time on is Green Means Go. Green Means Go incorporates a host of really popular ideas about how do we support land use, how do we support economic development, how do you make a transportation dollar go further than transportation so that the federal government is getting the best bang for its buck out of it's $1 that it puts in. And so really pushing with our delegation and for some of the broader play or some of the other locations that also share this desire to really focus on how we engage our transportation dollars in a broader sense. Those conversations are underway and we've gotten pretty significant support as we move forward. All of it's a little bit up in the air while we wait for the first draft of the bills to come out, but we'll probably, as a guess, which will be wrong now that I've said it out loud, as a guess, I would imagine that the next time you see us, we'll be talking about like what's in the bill text, or at least we'll have a more clear picture of what that looks like. And we can give a better assessment of sort of like, what does this mean individually for our region and what might it mean for localities in particular? So happy to continue to have that conversation, but just know that there is, despite a lot of dysfunction happening across the board as people talk about all kinds of issues, there's a lot of work happening in a bipartisan manner in the transportation space. And so it's very busy behind the scenes, though it's not something you're probably going to hear a lot about publicly. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions from directors?
Chair, can I, Devin, do you have more in your presentation?
No, this is.
Okay. I just, maybe just to connect it to the next few months and the next 12 months, right? So as Devin is saying, we have a transportation federal bill that goes through next September. So we've got one more year left. And as she's saying, we're eagerly looking forward to this draft text. Now, we may not get a new bill next year, but whatever happens in this draft will likely will live on, even if a bill doesn't get done next year. So a few things. It really means once that text is out, that we, bring Devin back and we begin to get active. I'm looking forward even ahead to next spring in Cap to Cap for those of you that are going to go to Cap to Cap and serve on the Transportation Committee, right? Really making sure that we understand what's in play. We have a really succinct and strong message for our region is going to be really important. And then the last thing too, I would just say in the months ahead here at SACOG, we've just done another call for federal grants that all of your jurisdictions are submitting federally. And we have a prioritization process, which has led into Cap to Caps in the past. Recent memory, we have a short list of things that this region is rallying behind that has been very effective at actually getting a lot of support, both from our members of Congress, but also U.S. Department of Transportation. It suggests we really have our act together. We know what we're rallying behind. And so, again, I just want to connect the dots. That's going to be something that is forthcoming. And I think will lead into what I hope will be a pretty active, 6 to 12 months for this body and for your local governments and all the other associations that you sit on and serve on at a federal level for transportation.
Thank you, James. And to your point with regards to the potential government shutdown, I will note that that's been, an ongoing thing through various administrations. So it doesn't matter who's in power. They seem to always have that conversation and really, wait till the very last minute to pass something, something to keep the government going. So
Congress works on a deadline and we like to pick it.
It used to be a frightening thing, years ago, but now it's just, same old, same old. So, but thank you very much. Thank you, James. Any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Do we have another report or is it, we have the state advocacy?
We do.
Yes.
Thank you, Devin.
Thank you.
On the state side, the California legislature has until this Friday to wrap up their session. So working through all the legislation that's left over, budget and administrative issues. And here with us today is Chris Lee, our state lobbyist with Political Group, who's going to give you an update.
Green means on and go. Yes, talk about motivated by deadlines. We are in the thick of deadline season in the legislature. As Bless mentioned, Friday, really Saturday morning at midnight is the deadline to pass bills in 2025. All of the really exciting bills, though, bills that have an appropriation related to the budget, raise taxes, call elections, or amend the Constitution, can all be taken up after midnight, though. So people will still be hanging out, I'm sure, around 2 or 3 a.m. is my guess. But some of the big things that are outstanding are things that we've been talking about all session. And one of those in particular is the cap and trade deal, which is something where we've been advocating along with partners from around the state for funding to help regions implement sustainable community strategies. It's also part of a bigger coalition ask that involves labor and local government and others. But the hangup in the legislative debate is not so much about how the funding gets allocated from the auction proceeds, but about the design of the programs. So the governor has essentially said, I want a status quo extension of cap and trade to 2045. The Assembly is very interested in the affordability aspects of it and the allocation of those credits and what that means for prices that consumers pay. And then the Senate is staking out other positions that are focused really on how do we really ramp down those emissions and how do we also simultaneously address the impacts of localized air pollution, including greenhouse gas emissions reductions in environmental justice communities. So taking up a lot of bandwidth and a lot of attention and really does seem to be at an impasse. There are other elements related to this tied up in the budget. So we keep refreshing, looking for a suite of budget trailer bills and budget actions. The Assembly has a hearing in the file for tomorrow, but this is where you've heard things like the governor's floating ideas about CEQA streamlining for oil production. There's talk about all sorts of other energy-related items that could be absorbed into that budget package. And so no time like the present to work some of these huge policy changes into the last week. But really, the last month of session, we had a week that was basically devoted entirely to the redistricting. We had the appropriations deadline, and then some of these other big picture items, Proposition 4 bond, housing bond, lots of other things seem to be moving to the back burner as this broader sort of cap and trade debate continues to play out. And then back onto my comment about being motivated by deadlines. There was at the beginning of the year a pretty strong push from the legislature and the governor to extend the program, but they actually have until 2030. And so might be seeing the impacts of not having an immediate deadline in terms of the ability to get a deal together. I'll just point out a few other things that we highlighted in the report. As we've discussed a few times, Assembly Transportation Chair Wilson is leading sessions around the state talking about the declining gas tax revenue as vehicles transition to zero emissions. She held the second in a series of informational hearings on that topic where 4 states from around the country shared their experience. So we've highlighted that. There's been road user charge pilots that are moving on to full implementation in several states around the country. And so those work groups around the state will continue. I believe there's one scheduled sort of near here in Solano County coming up next. Brown Act legislation and remote meetings, a bill that we've been tracking very closely for SACOG, SB 707, was amended to incorporate the Just Cause Brown Act flexibilities for members to be able to participate remotely in meetings, as well as the advisory committee provisions. And this was combined with some additional requirements related to public access, language access, focused on cities and counties, but also for special districts representing areas with large population. But it does look like there's a pathway for this bill. I'm hoping we can get this policy set for a few years. It would be extended until 2030. Pilot it, particularly for multi-jurisdictional entities, the ability to provide remote access, I think is just something where the law has not caught up with the practice that we've had in the years since COVID. And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about budget because there was discussion after the passage of HR 1 that there might be some state budget action to address the impacts of that. There's a hyperlink in your report, and I think it's really great, and we can send it around if you'd like. But the LAO did a really good rundown of all of the specific areas where HR 1 touches on the state budget, and also combined that with a timeline. And so for a lot of the heavy impacts that we'll see to programs, they are pushed out a few years, particularly in the healthcare space. So again, I just think it's really helpful context as we're thinking about the state budget situation. But the upshot was really, despite earlier chatter, there's not going to be significant state budget adjustments made this year. They're pushing that conversation into 2026. And then I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Certainly a busy time in both branches of government. Any questions? All right, well, it was so complete. We have no questions, so thank you so much. And there's
Thank
no
you.
public comment, Madam Clerk?
There's no public comment.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for your continued efforts. Next item on the agenda is other matters. I don't have anything listed, but I don't think there's anything before us, so we're going to move on to adjournment without objection.
Madam
Or-
Chair, just
yes.
a few quick things on
Okay, sorry,
calendars
moved
to
too
remind
quickly.
you. We have the board retreat coming up in Elk Grove, Friday, October the 3rd. You should have a calendar invite for that. We'd love to see everybody there. And then Wednesday, October the 1st, we are co-sponsoring a summit with Valley Vision. I believe it's going to be held in Citrus Heights. If you don't have invites for that, we really would love to get everybody. The entire board is invited to that summit. It should be really good. And then just to back up from there even further, we're going to see you next at your offsite board meeting coming up September 18th in Wheatland. Director Teeter is very excited to welcome you all. We're going to be at Bishop's Pumpkin Farm just after its grand opening for the season, and apparently it won't be too crowded perhaps, but anyway, we're
Will
excited.
we have a hayride? Will there be a hayride?
We know some people, so we'll talk to them. But anyway, very appreciative of Director Teeter stepping up and inviting you all there and making this happen. Apparently, if we were going to try and pull this off in October, you'd all be very unhappy and you'd never make it on time. So we hope that we'll do a little bit better in a couple of weeks, but we'll see you there. And please mark your calendars. If you don't have information on those other two events, I hope you do. You can talk to myself or Lynette. Thanks.
Chair, can I invite them all to Colfax this weekend?
Absolutely.
Yes, this weekend is Colfax Railroad Days. It's Saturday and Sunday, both 10 to 5. Both craft vendors, lots of food. We have Union Pacific bringing some of their rolling stock that you'll be able to have access to. 9 model trains, a train ride, a free kid zone, all kinds of bits and pieces for lots of entertainment if you'd like to come.
And we should have great weather. Good. All right, any other matters before us? All right, seeing no objection, I shall adjourn. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you. Recording stopped.